Goeiedag dames en here, almal in die Neelsie dan nou op hierdie oomblik. Kan ek gaan net vra dat ek julle aandag net vir 'n paar oomblikke kan kry? Op hierdie oomblik vir Stellenbosch Universiteit gaan ons vir die heel eerste keer in wel 'n hele aantal jare natuurlik nou die SR voorsittersdebat sal organiseer. Ek wil sê dankie vir al die persone en die partye wat bygedra het in die vorm van die SR verkiesingskomitee, die SR 2011-2012, die studenteparlementkomitee, die Neelsie studentesentrum en ook natuurlik Stellenbosch Universiteit se eie kommunikasie en skakeling. Kan ek gevra, is dit baie duidelik vir almal daar agter en hier voor dan ook? Is dit reg? Thank you all for your attention during this few moments that we will have our new Vice Rector Research and Innovation speaking to us about leadership and what that means to Stellenbosch University. May I please ask for your attention for Professor Eugene Kluter. Professor Eugene Kluter.
Thanks very much, Jana. Baie dankie, Jana. Dankie vir almal van julle se aandag. En eerstens wil ek net sê, ek is jammer dat ek nou inbraak maak op julle middagete hierso. So ek gaan julle nie lank besig hou nie. Ek moet sê ek is nie gewoond daaraan om te praat dat dit so baie raas nie, maar hier's cricket hier agter aan die gang. As jy 'n cheer, dan weet ek is vir my en nie vir die cricket nie. So net 'n paar woorde. Eerstens, wonder ek of julle weet, toe julle na Stellenbosch Universiteit gekom het, dat julle eerste belangrike keuse gemaak het in julle loopbane. En die rede hoekom dit 'n belangrike keuse is, julle het gekies om aan die beste universiteit in Suid-Afrika te kom swat. En dis nie wat ek so sê nie. Dit is die mense buite Stellenbosch Universiteit wat so sê op grond van die uitsette wat ons aan die universiteit lewer. En wat maak ons anders aan 'n universiteit so Stellenbosch as nie net ander universiteite nie, maar wat maak ons anders as ander organisasies? Die heel belangrikste ding wat ons onderskei is die feit dat daar studente op die kampus is. So julle studente wat vanmiddag hier sit, maak van ons 'n ander soort organisasie as enige ander organisasie. Die tweede belangrike ding is, julle mag dalk vra, nou wat doen 'n visierektor aan die universiteit? Want julle sien hom dalk nooit nie, julle weet dalk nooit waar hy is nie. Wat doen dekane en wat doen dosente? En dalk vinnig moet julle net iets daaroor deel. My belangrikste werk as visierektor aan die universiteit is julle sukses. So as dit wat ek doen nie bydra tot die sukses wat julle hier gaan behaal nie, dan doen ek nie my werk nie. So die heel belangrikste ding is die student se sukses. So julle is eintlik my fokus. Die tweede ding wat ek wil sê is dat julle skakel met die hoofbestuur van die universiteit is deur die studenteraad. En julle is op die oomblik besig om te dink daaraan oor wie julle gaan kies om julle te verteenwoordig as die studenteraad. En hulle gaan sekere leierseienskappe moet hê. Dit kan ek vir julle waarborg as hulle julle saak gaan dien. En dalk net 3 eienskappe wat ek sou wou hê iemand moet hê in 'n leierskapssituasie. Die eerste eienskap wat ek voor sal kyk in leierskap is vertroue. People don't follow people that they don't trust. I won't, and I don't think that you would follow someone that you don't trust. So for those of you who will be elected to lead the students, when you make decisions, you've got to ask yourself whether you are building trust or whether you are undermining trust. That's the number one thing which is important. Die tweede belangrike ding van leierskap, en dis nie so lekker altyd om te hoor nie, is leiers dien hulle mense wat vir hulle stem. Hulle dien hulle. Dit wil sê hulle sê nie voor wat moet gebeur nie. Hulle staan in diens van die wat vir hulle verkies. So wanneer jy nou gaan leiers kies, dan moet julle weet dat hulle het onderneem om julle saak te dien. En die derde eienskap wat ek in leiers soek, wat belangrik is dat hulle omgee. So ek sal nie iemand graag wil volg wat ek nie weet 'n bietjie vir my omgee nie. Nou daai eienskappe waarborg ek vir julle, moet julle versoek in leierskap, of dit die rektor is, 'n visierektor, 'n dekaan, 'n departementshoof, 'n dosent, of die leiers wat julle nou voor gaan stem, dan gaan dit oor daardie 3 eienskappe. Daar's baie ander ook, maar daardie 3 is belangrik. Vertroue, diensbaarheid en omgee. En julle gaan nou luister na 2 van die kandidate wat hulle standpunt gaan stel, en ek self baie nuuskierig om te hoor wat hulle gaan sê. En dis omtrent al wat ek vir julle wil sê vandag. Dis 'n verantwoordelike besluit wat julle gaan neem. Kies die regte leiers, hulle speel 'n belangrike rol op hierdie kampus. Hulle lewer belangrike insette wat gaan oor julle eie welstand en welwees. En dan sê ek baie sterkte vir die 2 wat nou gaan hulle standpunte kom stel en gaan debatteer. Kom ons hoop, daai cricketspan van ons doen die ding vandag. En baie dankie vir julle aandag en geniet julle ete. Baie dankie.
Baie dankie Professor Vlieter. Without much further ado, I just want to make 4 things clear, or rather 2 things. The first part is, we will give the candidates 2 minutes to present their views as to why they should be elected by the SRC. But before I start with that, I need to make one public apology. The SRC chairperson's election is taking place at 7 o'clock and not at 5 o'clock, as the poster indicated. And the SRC would be the people, of course, who would vote for that. You will have 1 minute after they have made their representations to ask your questions, and then, of course, they will rebut those. Without much further ado, I believe we're going ladies first. Yanda.
Yes, hello? Okay. I'm really not going to take long to sort of put my point of view across, because I think it's a relatively simple one, simple in saying, but not necessarily simple in doing. I really believe, and this is what I pinned my SRC re-election campaign on an SRC that's both looking forward and working today. I think we all have a greater vision, and as an SRC we will have a greater vision of what we want to do for the year and when we want to take the university, and especially, help create and turn Stellenbosch into the university that we want to send our kids to, the university that we want to be proud of. But in terms of that, I think we really need to take care of the basics first. So it's not just about, it's not just about the cluster initiatives and the hubs and sort of looking forward in terms of student communities and PSOs, but it really is working on immediate needs today. Like the fact that I feel that international students don't have enough representation on the SRC and in big, student governance parts. So I'd really like to have a portfolio for international student affairs on the SRC. Things like, the fact that we are not 100% aware of the fact that at Tygerberg they're really struggling with safety on their campus. So shuttles from their main campus out to Paro Center. So it's really about getting the little things and the basics done first and done well, and that will help towards, stimulate and work towards the greater vision of where I think we need to take the university in the next 5, 6, 7 years, with the things that we need to start doing today. Thank you.
That was Ms. Yanda Steeman, and next we will have the other candidate who has thus far declared themselves to be SRC chairperson candidate. Again, tonight someone might of course decide to declare him or herself, but these two has to date or this time declared themselves. Mr. Clinton de Pre.
Hallo almal. Sorry as ek bietjie weird klink, ek kan nie regtig myself hoor nie. Ek klink bietjie soos 'n transformer. My naam is Clinton de Pre en 'n bietjie agtergrond oor my. Ek beskou myself as 'n Kaapenaar. Ek kom van Kuilsrivier af. Lekker Kuila. Yes, once. Stellenbosch was my eerste en my enigste opsie geweest om te kom swat en ek dink dis 'n goeie besluit geweest. Ek is nog altyd iemand wat regtig optimisties is en baie daarvan hou om betrokke te wees. So ek was daai eager beaver wat alhoewel ek nie in die vensters dansie was nie, ek was tussen die 2 vensters vertonings want ek wou regtig graag daar gewees het. Bietjie sad story. Maar ek het die rondes gedoen. Ek was in Pieke Manswyk gewees. Verlede jaar was ek prim gewees van Pieke en ek was saam met Yanda op die prim komitee gewees. Sy was prim van Erika. En dis waar ons mekaar leer ken het en ek het baie respek vir haar ook. En toe was ek geseënd genoeg gewees om die prim komitee voorsitter te kon wees hierdie jaar, wat vir my baie geleer het, baie ondervinding gegee het, nie net van die strukture in die universiteit nie, maar ook van studente leierskap en hoe mens verskillende opinies bymekaar bring en hoe mense 'n komitee van sulke diverse mense kan lei. Nou as jy 'n caucus al bygewoon het, dan sal jy weet wat my wat ons sê catchphrases is. Die twee goeders waarvoor ek regtig graag staan en wat ek graag in my termyn sal wil bevorder, wat ek voel hierdie jaar 'n goeie aanloop gekry het, is die hele konsep van studentegemeenskappe en dat studentegemeenskappe die voertuig is om by studente sukses uit te kom en daarmee wil ek aansluit by wat Prof Kloete nou net gesê het. En dit is wat ons in gemeenheid met bestuur. Ons albei wil van die staanspoor af die beste vir ons studente hê en studente sukses daar uitkry. En daarom is dit van kardinale belang dat die SRC stem, dat julle stem gehoor word oor hoe ons daar wil uitkom. So studentegemeenskappe, punt nommer 1. En punt nommer 2, dink ek, ons kampus is ook baie gereed om te gesels en met mekaar interaksie te hê oor die moeilike vrae in ons land en op ons kampus. Wat is transformasie? Hoe voel ons daaroor? Want dit help nie, ons het nie hierdie gesprekke as ons op universiteit is en die land verwag van ons om uit te gaan hierna en 'n voorbeeld te stel en die spreekwoordelike leiers te wees in ons land as ons nie gepraat het oor hierdie goed nie. So sonder nou te veel filosofies raak, vra gerus julle vra as julle nog belangstel daaroor. En ja, nog 'n interessante feit vir my, ek is mal oor steady stampies. Jy kan my pretty much omkoop met enige steady stampie behalwe die custard flavor. I don't care much for custard. So, dankie.
Dames and heren, you've all heard about why these two candidates are running for SRC chair for 2030. This year, we were blessed with having Anina Botha. Thank you so much, and I apologize for that bit of irritation. During this year, we were fortunate enough to have Anina Botha as our SFC chair. Before her, we had Jan Kreiling, and before him, we had Gerard Wieser. This year for 2013 is most pivotal for Stellenbosch University, and these two amazing people have decided to put themselves in line to lead us. Do you have any questions at this point? Please raise your hand so that we can just move the mic to where you are. Yeah. Do we have any question at this moment from anyone here? I think I will lead off by asking the question that was asked on Twitter. Both Ziyanda and Clinton, if you are elected as SRC chair, what is the one focus point that you would want to have? Just one thing that is irreplaceable and really very important to Stellenbosch University, in your view?
If there was one particular thing that I would focus on, I mentioned it in the introduction, it's just basically about the mobility study. I really feel like we're at the point here at the university where we have to make it easier for students from surrounding areas of Stellenbosch to get in and off campus. It's incredibly important for the future of the Hub Initiative, for the future of the Cluster Initiative, for the future of student communities, all of those different things. That is an incredibly, incredibly important part of where the university is going and where it needs to go within the next few years. Obviously, you know, John, if I can sneak in the second part, it's also the process of transformation. Because again, transformation is not a destination, it's not an endpoint, it's not a tick box, but it's going to be a process and a journey. And I feel like a huge part of that is really getting as many different students as we possibly can onto campus, interacting with each other and sharing each other's space. So that's really important for me.
As I said, my main focus area would be student communities. Now, if I can elaborate on that, it sounds wishy-washy and it sounds all up there, but it's really quite a sneaky way of working in many points. It's quite a multifaceted point. Included in that is the Hub Initiative. Being a PSO student myself, having had many a lunch in the Neelsie, and people, you know, breaking in on my lunch as I'm doing to you right now, I know the very importance of having a space on campus where you can say, this is where I belong, this is where I can feel I'm part of this community. And we currently have only one hub in Stellenbosch, and I've seen the fruits that it bears. And now we need to fight to get the rest of the funding made available to bridge the gap between PSO students and resident students, since 70% of our student population are PSO students. Now obviously linked in with that is also the surrounding factors like the mobility study, and like the fact that you cannot have a community if the community is not cohesive. So if you don't speak about these things like transformation and the Koolshuisplasingsbeleid and how that ties in with where we want our university to be in 10 years' time, then you cannot have a campus, and then, yeah, so that's the main focus area that I would like to push in all directions.
Thank you so much, Clinton Nzianda. We have a hand right here in front. Bessie, if you could.
Hello, Clinton and Nzianda. My question to you is, you talk about student communities, and you've specifically mentioned the hubs, but you haven't mentioned, which actually falls underneath the PRIM committee, but you haven't mentioned the other two bodies. I'd like to know how the other two bodies fit into your vision of expanding student communities.
So the question was basically asked, you have the three statutory bodies, the PRIM committee, the Societies Council, and the Academic Affairs Council, and what are our opinions on the two. Having been chair of one of those statutory bodies, I know the importance of the link between the three bodies and the fact that they have different purposes, and that it's very important for the three bodies to acknowledge the different roles that they play on campus. Now, obviously, I come from a HARCA and a PRIM perspective, but I know that's not the only way where there's space for leadership on campus. So obviously, the societies, the over 50 societies that there are very important in terms of developing another sphere of leadership, as well as the Academic Affairs Council, which also have their specific interests. Now, those are very important because that ties in with the fact that we as students have different areas of interest, and that it's not only those positional leadership positions that you can further yourself in, or that you can pursue if you want to. So obviously it's very important to acknowledge that, and I believe with the new chairs of all three of those bodies, I think there's a good future for the interworkings between those three bodies.
I think this past year, having had the experience I had on the SRC, and obviously getting to knowing the three chairs of the statutory bodies, including Clinton, we sort of really start to see that there's a really tight relationship that needs to form between all three statutory bodies for student success, for almost every sort of goal we want to achieve. And I think, recognizing the fact that we're all bound in common by, first of all, our multi-identity, but also by the fact that we're all here to study, how the outcomes becomes very important. But, besides that, you also have the Societies Council, which outside of your, area of interest in what you're studying and whatever else you're doing at the university, there's also a whole other level to that kind of, human experience and growth. So you really do start to see that all three bodies are interlinked and very, very important for the success of any student. So in that sense, to really bring out the fact that we're all here to help each other, we're all here to help each other grow, we're all part of each other's eventual journey, all three bodies become massively important. And the three chairs, and also everyone working underneath them, that also becomes really important to create relationships between them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we just have a second round of questions? We have a question right at the back. If you get the mic.
Yes, hello. I just want to know if any of you guys don't get the position of chair, are you going to stand for vice chair? And say, for argument's sake, if you don't get vice chair, what happens next?
Thank you for your question. And it is a very valid question, and something that I have thought about for a really long time. And I'll say that yes, I will stand for vice chair if I don't get elected chair. More than willing to do that. But I don't think that I would stay on the SRC if I didn't get chair or vice chair. And that's not because I don't want to stay on to the SRC. It's a simple fact. I think it's a very different story if you're going for a second term. If I can honestly right now say that I don't have as much passion, energy, and love for any other portfolio the way that I did this year for transformation. I literally put myself through a whole lot and experienced a whole lot and grew in more ways than I ever could have thought possible. But that was because of the portfolio of transformation. And I really don't know that I have that same energy and commitment for something else, whereas someone else might have that same sort of energy.
Yeah, obviously standing for chair is not a decision that you make lightly. It's something that I know Z and myself have been grappling with for quite a while. So So yeah, if I don't get chair, then I will stand for vice chair. And I've also thought of which other portfolio, because you have to realize that in order to allocate portfolios and in order for the SRC as a team to work well together, you need to connect people's passions with the right portfolio. So I believe my passions would be most suited for chair and secondly vice chair. And if none of those two realize, then student wellness would be the portfolio that I can see myself achieving my own goals that I've already outlined, specifically student communities and so on. I think the committees that the student wellness person sits on, if the SRC decides to continue that portfolio or create a similar one, I think that would be the portfolio that I would most likely be able to push that agenda as well.
May I ask, do you have any further questions at this moment? I see a hand down there.
No. A friend of mine just tweeted me to ask you guys, how do you plan, or how do you think is the best way to hold management accountable?
Hello. Okay. Okay. So firstly, I think it's crucial to realize that many people, when they enter into leadership positions, they have a negative view of management. They think it's a zero-sum game where it's us versus management, and that's really not the case. That's why I stressed in my opening speechy thingy that the thing that I share with Professor Klute is the fact that we both are looking for student success. So in that regards, we have the same objectives. We might differ about how to get there, and that's why it's very important where the university needs to listen to student input. Now, obviously, decisions have been made in the past, and the way that we keep them accountable is through the committees that the SRC sit on. Through the fact that when we sit in SRC meetings, we not only keep each other accountable, but we also decide on, like, this is our vision, this is our strategic mission and our vision for the year ahead. And we will push, whichever committees we sit on, we will push for that. So where management has made decisions or they've committed themselves under the HOPE project or under the strategic aims of the university to student success, then they need to do that. We've done that this year as well, where we've questioned the decision about Onderneming, that they say Onderneming should continue as it was, and we objected to that, and we say we would like to ask how Onderneming is being is a contribution to student success if you're disrupting people while they're having their test week for purely 5 days, and we don't see how those two can be reconciled. So we are in the process of speaking up and having the confidence, having the know-how, and that development in leadership style in order to speak up in meetings and not be afraid of getting a backlash or anything. And I think our management is quite open to receiving that sort of criticism.
So my base theory in terms of holding management accountable is the fact that I really feel like between the SRC and management there should be healthy tension. So it's not a case of, every single time there's going to be massive confrontation over every single issue, but it's just about each of us remembering our clear roles. And that there is a bigger vision that management sees, there's a bigger vision that the SRC sees, and sometimes they're going to be in conflict in certain ways. But it's not about, mistrusting management and going, second guessing every decision they make or whatever they do. But it's about remembering the fact that at the end of the day, we get our mandate from students. And we're always going to try and push for and work towards what students truly need. And if that sometimes means that the relationship and sitting around the table is going to be harder than others, then that should be the case. But it isn't necessarily about, creating conflict, because there are plenty of times where you have to work with management to achieve something and not just constantly butt heads. So in that sense, I think that's the really sort of base principle that it comes down to at the end of the day, that we do want, similar things for the university and for students, but the SRC must always remember their mandate to students and the best interests of students.
Thank you, Nzanda. If I can sneak in a question from one member from Student Parliament as well. The question was, one of you will be head of the SRC if you're the only ones who are running tonight. what is your commitment to strengthening student court and student parliament to ensure that they can fulfill their mandates?
I just want to start off by saying I truly believe that all three bodies, not that they should be separate, but that all three bodies function well on their own. Because it's what it comes down to is, you know, same in terms of the tiers of national government where you have your legislative, the executive and your judiciary, and that there's supposed to be checks and balances for each other. So obviously helping each other out where necessary, but at the end of the day knowing that each one has a specific role to fill and that it's different. I can be very blunt and honest and say that I feel that you know, student court shouldn't necessarily be something that comes up very often, where student court must only be there where necessary. And I'm not saying that they should be sidelined, but at the end of the day, like we see again, like a national government, you shouldn't have the constitutional court constantly running to rescue, you know, the sole situation. So in that sense, I think there should be a really clear and good memorandum of understanding between all three heads of those bodies, but then also realizing that all three must function separately and well on their own.
Clearly a very good point Zianda made, and I can only reiterate what she said. I think the new student constitution, if you're not aware of it, we have a new student constitution that's come. I also want to see what's happening. Okay. The new student constitution comes into play officially on the 1st of September, and the powers, if I can call it so, of the student parliament has been elaborated or has been extended a bit to specifically hold SRC members accountable as well, where a vote of no confidence can be made if an SRC member truly does not fulfill their mandate. So in that sense, another check and balance has also been implemented to strengthen the role of the SRC and to make sure that they stick to their mandate, which I believe is perfect. And I also think that currently the student court, as Zianda said, is also fulfilling their role. And when they do pop up too often, you know something's going wrong, then something systemically is wrong elsewhere. So, yeah, I believe the interplay between those three bodies are also very important.
Thank you so much, Fenton. May I ask, is there any question at this moment?
Hello. As SRC Chair, you're obviously always representing the students, as well as SRC when your opinion is asked, and sometimes university as well. With that in mind, how do you feel about the relationship with other universities and how we can actually work together to make students' lives at Stellenbosch campus better by working together with other people?
We've had a lot of contact with other universities this year. En ek dink ons het baie geleer ook by ander universiteite. Nie net in terme van hoe hulle SR-stelsels werk nie, maar ook hoe hulle universiteite funksioneer. En ek dink ons het baie goed ook oor onsself gevoel toe ons gesien het hoe goed Stellenbosch eintlik doen. Hoe fantasties ons SR-stelsel werk, al sou baie van julle nie so voel nie. Op ander kampusse kry SR niks gedoen nie, omdat hulle onder andere polities geaffilieerd is en omdat hulle stak is in deadlocks die hele tyd oor hulle verskil vir goeders wat niks te doen het met studente se belange nie. So ek dink dit is fantasties en is goed om te sien hoe ons SR 'n goeie rol speel op ons kampus, maar natuurlik is daar baie om te leer ook by ons ander universiteite. Ons het 'n goeie verstaan met Rhodes Universiteit. Ons stem baie ooreen met hulle oor baie dinge en dis lekker om te sien hoe hulle ook hulle kampus gedoen kan kry. Natuurlik is dit anders want hulle kampus is baie kleiner as ons, maar dis lekker om ook by hulle te leer om daai skakel goed te hou. Dan op 'n ander se we just had the New Hope Summit recently, which is aimed at strengthening the bonds between the Western Cape universities and higher education institutions like Willand College and False Bay College as well. So it's good to strengthen those bonds because you learn absolutely so much from the other SRCs. You learn on a practical level about how they handle their student fees, and you can talk to them and say it's necessary for us to take a stand and say it's not sustainable if student fees go up every single year by 10%. So it's good when you have a good relationship with them and you can say, let's do something about this. It's bigger than only our institution, and this is how we need to tackle actually something within the higher education department, which sounds you know, like something that a mere student can't do. But if you work together in that regard, you can do that. And the only way that that's going to happen is through regular interaction with the other SRCs, like we had this year.
I'm going to pick up from Clinton's point and say exactly that in terms of, you know, student fees and starting to help solve problems that are very common amongst all the universities and not just necessarily our own. So I know that, for example, this year we've been in touch with UCT and UWC and other higher education institutions in the province and say that we as the students of the Western Cape really do feel that student fees is becoming a real issue in terms of the fact that it shouldn't go up by that much every year. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect is not just the SRCs working together, but the SRCs starting to look to each other and say, different groups of students, what can they learn from each other? So an idea that I had earlier on in the year, and it didn't quite work out, but hopefully it will, you know, continue with whoever takes the portfolio of transformation, is doing a sort of cross-museum visit from here to Pretoria. So something like that, you know, helps enhance your experience and knowing that in your 4 or 5 years, that's 3 or 4 years at Stellenbosch, you know, you don't just visit our own campus, but you go to another one, and you start to see that, oh, okay, there are opportunities at Pretoria that aren't necessarily available at Stellenbosch, whatever it is. So, you know, smaller sort of programs like that that maybe only take 20, 30, 40 students, but you start to really, you know, enhance students' lives by saying, yes, I was at Stellenbosch, but for a week I visited Pretoria and I could see what was going on differently. Yeah.
I think we had a hand from Wade Roger.
Hi guys. My first question is, do you think that having served on the SRC sets you at an advantage to be the chair of the SRC for this term? And then secondly, with only 14% of the student mass voting, do you think that you are technically representing the student mass? And how then do you actually address the issue of student apathy and the 86% of students who did not vote?
Okay, so your first question about advantages on, I think advantage is a very negative word. It sounds, ironically, but it sounds like, let me begin it this way. If you have served on the SRC this year, you gain perspective of how the university works and that things necessarily cannot be done by tomorrow. The university has to go through different processes. And with that experience, I believe any SRC member who's been on the SRC before, any hardcore member, any member who has been through a structure before can serve as a mentor to the people that are coming in. That doesn't necessarily say they dictate about what must happen, but they can provide insight into how the inner workings of the university works and how it would be best to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. So, so I think it doesn't necessarily put us to an advantage, it puts the whole SRC to an advantage because we can be a higher caliber SRC and like, you know what we're doing. The second part of your question in terms of student apathy and the low votage percentage, that's a question every single year. I don't think, and I've also thought about this a lot because I was voted onto the SRC last year through the Prim committee, which means only the 40 or the 45 Prims that I've been working with for the whole year, they already know me and they realize the importance of voting for a chair and a vice chair. And therefore that was a non-issue in terms of apathy. I think the main thing where students realize why it's important to vote for the SRC is when they have information, when they know what the SRC does. Why are the Eetzale packed with people when they vote for the hardcore and the Prim, but they don't vote for SRC members? And that's because they realize that it's important because those people have a direct input into their lives. I think if many people realize exactly to what extent the SRC has a much more direct impact to student lives, they wouldn't be as apathetic as they are. If they realize the influence that the SRC carries in terms of student fees, the hubs, the mobility study, all those things, the fact that thanks to SRC pushing management and holding them accountable, we now have gotten management to agree that the swimming pool at Kutsenberg is going to be rebuilt finally. So it's those things where students don't realize that it's because of student input that those things are being furthered, that they don't see it as a viable thing to vote for the SRC. So it's not just about going into election time and then trying to explain to people why it's important. It's the same thing with national elections. Why do you only see posters going up while it's election time when people always complain you need to make it viable for us to vote for a government, in between elections? So that's what we need to do, and we need to make the SRC more accessible to students, and we need to keep students up to date on a regular basis on what the SRC is doing. That's why we've focused, and we've discussed this, Zianda and myself, about a simple thing when we're sitting in meetings with management to tweet about what we're doing. So that people can see, okay, well, while I'm having my coffee on the replay now, they are discussing student fees. So that's the thing that people need to realize. Those types of, those meetings happen every single day during the day.
Okay, well, Clinton has literally said everything I was going to say. That's sort of, thank you, Clinton. High five, yes. What I want to add to that and reiterate exactly and re-emphasize what he was saying in terms of the fact that, again, it would put the SRC in advantage if you have an SRC chair that's more experienced. And in saying that, it's not that the SRC chair would be at the head and sort of drags everyone along because they know what they're doing. You must just trust in them. It's the fact that the SRC chair would be at the core and in the core functions of what the SRC does. When you have someone who's experienced, when you have someone who can mentor, when you have someone who can give advice, it really does, at the end of the day, raise the standard of the work that the SRC as a whole body ends up doing. So that's the one part about, advantage in that sense. And then the other part in terms of apathy with students, again, like Clinton said, it's really getting students to realize just how relevant and just how important the SRC's representation on different committees and different bodies ends up being. I'll give you a really simple example. With the way that our exams work, where you can write, first opportunity or you can write second opportunity. It used to be that everyone had to write first opportunity, get between 40-49%, then you could only write second opportunity. Up until a few years ago, and I can say this because I've been on campus for 6 years now, up until about 2 or 3 years ago, that used to be the case. And then it was changed because of input by the RBAD, because of input by work that the SRC does, because of input by student councils, that now students can write either one of those two if your exam timetable is too hectic. So in that sense, it wasn't management that woke up one day and went, oh, let's make students' lives easier, let's change, the rules. It was literally students fighting almost every single meeting to have that put in place. So at the end of the day, it really does add towards student success. So it's very sad to me that students don't know that and don't know that that's the type of work that the SRC does. But maybe we need to market ourselves better. Maybe we need to be, maybe we need to be more visible in our courses and our PSOs. Maybe that's what we need to do, and I'm happy to do that. But it really is about realizing that the SRC does, it's not just plain sad, it's not just Fast Cup, it's not just sort of random things on campus. It's every single day, little things that the SRC does.
Thank you, Zianda. Clinton. May I ask you if any other question at this moment? I see a hand right in the corner.
Hi. My question is with regards to the fact that the new SRC will be voting for SRC chair. My problem with that is the SRC chair is not voted for by the voters who voted for SRC. The SRC chair is voted for by the SRC. So the debate we're having here today is basically we're having this debate to all the people in the Neelsie. However, tonight, 3 or 4 people could be running for SRC chair and it will be up to the SRC to be voting for the SRC chair. So my question is, who is the SRC then accountable to? Is the SRC chair then going to be accountable to the SRC and represent the interest of the SRC? Or is the SRC actually representative of the student interest because students didn't vote for SRC chair?
Thank you, Deirdre. I read your Freya Student blog last night, so I kind of expected this question. The problem I have with that is your scenario would be a viable question, or a more viable question rather, if the SRC that the students elected then appointed another student that was not elected by the students to suddenly be chair. The fact that only the candidates that stood in the open election that any student had the chance to vote for, irregardless of what the voting percentage is, because that's nothing that we can do about that. The fact is every student had the opportunity to vote, and those 9 candidates that were elected, those are the 9 candidates that campus feels should represent them. And then out of those 9 candidates, which have already been ratified or seen as acceptable by campus, then that's mandate number 1. Their mandate, is, by standing in the open election, is to represent the student voice, whichever portfolio they have. So I don't see it as the fact that now, because they've only been elected by the SRC members, that they're only accountable to the SRC. We have student parliament there to institute a vote of no confidence if the chair doesn't do his or her job. So that's exactly those measures that are so crucially important to make sure that any SRC member is held accountable. Furthermore, I think you need to distinguish between a national election and our election. We are not a party, political system. We are not a system that looks at national government and national elections and strive towards that. We are our campus, and the main objective of our SRC and our SRC chair and vice chair is to elect the best candidates. Now, if you have an election process like we have now, where, to be honest, not many students pitch up for the caucuses, they vote based on mission statements, a quick paragraph that they read, and I don't think that's fair towards campus. I don't think that's necessarily the best process to elect the best chair. Where we've been away for a weekend now, we've been in each other's faces the whole weekend in very difficult circumstances where we had to work together as a team. I'm assuming that's the cricket, not a fantastic point that I'm making. Where we've been in each other's faces, we know each other a bit more, and I think in that regard, we are electing a better SRC chairperson to serve the students better. So yeah, that's...
I'm going to agree with Clinton quite a bit in terms of the fact that I think the 9 people who have been voted in the open election by campus are the 9 people that students have vested their trust in, their faith and their confidence in. So in that sense, I really don't think that those 9 people are going to choose, the prettiest person for SRC chair or, the most good looking or whatever it is. It really does come down to the fact that those different people have had their own faith and their own trust put into them and their leadership skills and what they've shown by campus. So it's not a case of just literally, picking a hat out or picking a name out of a hat. And that's exactly why we've had a tough weekend that we did. I can show you the bruises all the way down my right-hand side where, we really did push and challenge each other and got to know each other so well in a space of, 72 hours or whatever it was. And it really is about the fact that the people who are going to be electing chair tonight are going to put a hell of a lot of effort into it. That it's not just about sort of picking at random. And so in that sense, I'm very comfortable. In that sense, I'm very comfortable with whoever gets elected chair, whether it is Clinton or I, in terms of the fact that I really don't think that it was a decision that anyone's going to make on a whim or, or whatever they decide to choose. And again, we are accountable to the student body because at the end of the day, if a chair is not doing their job, they can have a motion of no confidence instituted against them. I don't see any of these 9 people or the ex officio bodies either just saying, oh, we have a rubbish chair, we'll just pick up the slack and keep going. I feel like they would also want more out of the chair and then say, if you're not doing your job properly, we will challenge you and we will make you go further or leave, basically. Go beyond.
If I can also slip in a question that was also emailed earlier today. Before I do that, I have a question right there. Great.
Okay, well, I just had an interesting thought earlier about representativity, and I was just thinking about the fact that, we have such a diverse group of students, and such a small number of people vote. And a lot of the time people accuse, the SRC of not representing the student voice. I was thinking a lot of the time you have a minority that is so small that even if all of them voted, they still couldn't get someone representing them onto the SRC. And it's just an interesting concept of like, okay, how are those people ever going to become representative? And if you look at the fact that a great majority of people on SRC are from reses, but the greatest majority are from PSOs, does that mean that reses are overrepresented on SRC? And like, just how do you deal with the fact that representativity is not really something that seems to represent percentage-wise of students? Just say now there's like a certain percentage of coloured students on campus, but they only have a much smaller representation on the SRC. Like, how do you balance that with every view and every diverse view being able to be incorporated into how you are informed in terms of representing students?
I think that's a very interesting question. It raises quite a few, sort of sub-questions and topics underneath it. But what I would say, and the best sort of way that I look at it, is the simple fact that just because you look a certain way, just because you're blonde, just because you're interested in one thing, doesn't mean that there aren't other facets to you. So it's not about coloured students feeling represented by having a coloured student on the SRC. It's the simple fact that the rest of the SRC needs to know that they represent students. Not politically affiliated students, not coloured students, not blonde students, not whatever else. They represent student needs. And when you start to literally just not focus on one thing, but look at the bigger picture and realize the job that you need to do doesn't just involve one aspect or pushing one certain agenda, then you really start to realize that actually there's greater responsibility with the role of not just representing one group or saying I'm going to stand here and represent and speak for all coloured students, because that's also impossible. There's no possible way that you can know all coloured students want this thing or all students of a certain race or ethnicity or whatever want one thing. It's about realizing which interests of students you need to represent, and then realizing that I'm going to take in all of those different facets and not just necessarily the one.
Yes, I agree with Zianda on this. I think another thing, I experienced exactly the same thing this year, where it's not necessarily because of your background that you represent a specific opinion. Being a PSO person myself and being chairperson of the Prim committee, where of the 40 Prims, 30 are residence Prims, and finding myself fighting for the Koolshuisplasingsbeleid and fighting for ontruiming, of which I know nothing of, but feeling just as passionate about it while I'm in those meetings, just I think attests to any SRC member's mandate to fulfill the best interest of students. Now your question is, how do you find out what is the main interest of students? And I think that's where, as Zianda said, we need to strengthen those bonds and make the SRC relevant and accessible. Like, Twitter, we all use, well, most of us use Twitter, Facebook. The four-base relationship where you take the SRC to the people, you make the SRC relevant, because I honestly feel that a rational person, if they have all the information of what the SRC does, they cannot help but feel it necessary to vote for the SRC, or at least give an input. As we've seen throughout the year with stuff like the Koolshuisplasingsbeleid or ontruiming. When it's an issue that students feel strongly about, their voices are being heard and we get those opinions. So that's the one thing. I think another thing that you also raised is, or another thing that I thought of now is representativity versus leadership. Sometimes it's also very important to realize that you are not merely just a spreekbuis for what the masses want, but it's a difficult balance to realize that sometimes you need to take people where they are and you need to lead them to where they should be. And that's why it's very important that the SRC talks about these things. And I'm very glad to see that after this weekend, we have such a diverse SRC group, in terms of mindset and background and everything, that I believe that those different viewpoints will definitely be heard in SRC meetings or, in whichever meeting we sit in, where we can push all those different facets of an issue and not just purely have it from a resident side, purely because we were in a residence ourselves.
Thank you, Clinton and Zianda. May I ask, is there at this moment any other question that needs to be addressed? No. I would like to slip in the last question that was asked in a previis email. Stellenbosch University has committed itself to sustainability, systemic sustainability, and also diversity. Would you as SRC Chair champion this? And how would you also communicate to the houses to make sustainability a part of their daily occurrence, since at the moment it's problematic?
Yes, obviously it's very important to realize under under which banner do we function? Obviously, we are part of the university, and it would be counterproductive for us to now suddenly have our own little mission on the side. So it's very important to realize where the university is heading, and how do we fit into that, and what can we as students contribute to get to that, because obviously management and students can't head in different direction, and that's why the role of the SRC is so important. Sustainability is very important. I think Gina made she did a very good job this year of involving the green hawkers, and the first thing is to push the awareness of green, and it's not merely just sustainable in terms of green initiatives and so on, like the multi-fixer, but it's also in terms of the sustainability of us as an institution. Where are we heading? Is that the best future that we can be? Like student fees, it's not sustainable that it should rise every year by 10%. Where will it end in the next 10 years? So that's another thing where we can link into the aspect of sustainability, where we as an SRC can champion something and reconcile the passion and the viewpoint of students with that of the university. That's the main thing. And obviously, diversity and transformation, we stress so much. And it is, like we've seen in the previous Marty as well, it's an issue when top management does not reflect that diversity. And that is something that worries us as students, where we feel that management needs to be committed to that, and not beat around the bush when it comes to that, but truly commit themselves to making this campus a diverse campus and transform not merely just students but also university management, and really put their actions where their words are.
Okay, so we know that the 4 strategic goals of the university over the next couple of years are knowledge, diversity, systemic sustainability, and student success. Obviously, all 4 of those are really large areas, and they can be broken down into different things, and all 4 together start to push towards where we need to be in the future. So again, as an SRC, we're not going to go off on our own mission and go, oh, because the university is going right, we're going to go left. We're really going to try and match up our aims and our vision to where I think management is going and where the university is going to be going in the next couple of years. Having said that, I think something like diversity especially, and transformation, again, like I said, it's a process. And it's not a destination, it's not a tick box, it's not a, okay, we're here, woo, we've arrived, whatever. It comes down to the fact that, whoever's going to be taking on the portfolios of critical engagement, of transformation, of those different portfolios, they're going to be joining a movement. They're going to be joining, a thought process. They're going to be joining a movement of students mobilizing towards a greater sort of vision and where we need to go. And while it's starting on our campus, it's also very national as well. Where, we're not just isolated at Stellenbosch trying to do our own thing, but I think eventually as a country, we're trying to get to a point where we really are socially cohesive. So I think it's a massively, massively important part of whatever an SRC is going to be doing, not just our own, but I think in the country. So in that sense, fully behind it. When it comes to systemic sustainability, much like Clinton said, when you start to realize just how important your little contribution and your little bit of difference makes at the end of the day, you really do start to realize that it's not that difficult to, recycle a can instead of just throwing it away in a normal, dustbin. It's about getting students to realize that if we don't start changing our ways now, we're going to end up in, a very, very different world, the world we don't want to be in the next couple of years. And that it's not just anyone else's responsibility, it's not my neighbor's responsibility, it's not Clinton's responsibility, it's my responsibility too. That I have a role to play in all those different things. And again, Gina King did an incredible, incredible job this year of making it very relevant, really getting people who are passionate about sustainability in those different positions with Green Hawkers and bringing that out of them.
Can I just say thank you for all of you who attended, and also for our student dean and deputy student dean, and of course our vice rector teaching, research and innovation. I would like to first off say thank you to these amazing candidates. I wish the new SRC well in the election process tonight, and I also want to invite all of you to the next student parliament session, which will take place on the 29th of August. Thank you so much, and once again, have a great day.